Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 63rd part of What If Deku Had a Robot Wolf. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 63, Melissa Vero Shield. Origin. Earth. A small, blue-green planet somewhere in the uncharted backwaters of the unfashionable end of the western spiral arm of the galaxy. Not a very impressive planet, with the only thing it had going for it being that it was habitable. In orbit around this little blue-green planet, high above the ionosphere, a large metal something flew high above the planet, hanging in the air exactly the way that bricks don't. The planet below, as well as the colony on its small moon, were completely oblivious to its presence. It passed by the Luna Observatory, drifted over Hat Creek, flew over Rutten 600 without a blip, and Jadrell Bank looked straight through it. Which was a pity, as it was exactly the kind of thing they were looking for. Inside the large metal object, David Shield and Toshinori Yagi, two ape descendants whose bodies had undergone a mutation called a quirk, an odd mutation that allowed them to use powerful and unique abilities. Before them stood four women. Not an odd thing to happen. In fact, most men would be excited by being alone in a room with four highly attractive women. This, however, was not a normal situation, as said women were all 7 foot tall or taller, built like Amazons from Greek mythology, and all possessing green skin. So not at all normal. The lead one, a very tall woman who stood at 7'6", had a very attractive, voluptuous, and well-built body. Her skin was a shade of light green, her hair was short and pink, her eyes were brown with rather thin eyelashes above them, and her lips had pink lipstick on them. It didn't help that the four of them were wearing outfits similar to that slave girl costume from Star Wars that Princess Leia wore during Return of the Jedi. And they looked good in them. She, and the other three women she was with, all bowed in perfect sync. Greetings, David Shield. Welcome aboard the VCS Magnesium. We are Thasos Vigishi Vero, ambassador of the Kargrian Vestral. Well, that's not the kind of insect I was expecting, David remarked, having expected something a little bit more alien, not human looking. Thasos and the other three of her kind straightened themselves out. We apologize for bringing you two up here without prior warning, but our situation is dire and we could not afford to wait to make proper first contact. I see, David said, still surprised by the human-like appearance of these aliens. This was rather unexpected from something he expected to be insectoid. So, what do you need help with? Our ship has been damaged and we require some assistance in repairing it, Thasos replied. It's not much, we only need a vital component that we are unable to manufacture ourselves. Once that's done, we'll be out of your hair. David nodded. So they needed their help then. That would explain the abruptness of their transportation here. Well, he was sure that he and Toshinori could help them. So, you're in need of our help then, Toshinori said. Well, whilst transporting us up here without warning might be seen as less than legal, you didn't exactly have the means to contact us beforehand. I'm guessing that you did not intend to bring me up here as well. Yes, we were only aiming for David Shield, not you, Thasos said. We just couldn't afford to wait any longer for you two to part, nor did we have any idea who was who. So we just transported both of you to play it safe. Toshinori nodded. Normally he had to look down at people due to his height, normally standing a bit back so that they didn't have to stretch their necks. But these women were so tall that he didn't really need to do that. Hell, he had to look up at Thasos due to her height. This was going to be one hell of a new experience for both of them. Well, if your circumstances are dire, I can see why you couldn't afford to wait, Toshinori said. But, knowing that, you have my word as a hero that I will do everything within my power to aid you in your hour of need. The four women blinked at them in confusion. We're sorry, what's a hero? Thasos asked, sounding confused. Toshinori blinked. You don't know what a hero is? They're an alien culture, All Might, David said, not using Toshinori's name for security reasons. Toshinori didn't want his real name to become public knowledge after all. There's going to be a lot of things about us that'll confuse them, and vice versa. Ah, I see, Toshinori said. Well, I'm sure I can explain what a hero is. But late. No, doesn't seem like the best time to do that. That would be most preferable, Thasos said, eyeing up Toshinori's well-built body. Apologies, but we didn't exactly have time to properly understand your planet's culture. We were more focused on finding someone who could help us. Understandable. You were in a rush, and don't really have time for that stuff, David said. So, seeing that you might be in a rush, should we get seated? Indeed we should, Thasos said before she gestured towards the table behind her. If you would like to get seated, we'll start soon. David nodded before he and Toshinori sat down at the table. Thasos and the other three women sat at one end of the table, Thasos herself sitting at the head of the table. David and Toshinori sat on the other end. Now, before we begin, we'd like to introduce you to a few of my handmaidens, Thasos said before she gestured towards the women seated to her left. Our second in command, Irira Artarna. Irira nodded. She had dark green skin, silvery blue hair tied into a ponytail, dark blue eyes, and gold lipstick on her lips. Thasos gestured towards the woman to her right. Inoso Lur, our ship's medical officer. Inoso bowed. She had pale green skin, short brown eyes, and dark red lipstick on her lips. Thasos gestured towards the women seated next to Inoso. And Vora, our ship's engineer. Vora bowed politely. She was by far the shortest out of the four Cardrians, her head being at the same level as Thasos' well-endowed chest. She had dark pink hair, blue eyes, and dark pink lipstick on her lips. David nodded. It's good to meet you. I'm David Shield. And this is my friend, All Might. Toshinori nodded his head, his signature smile on his face. It's good to meet you both, Thasos said. Now, on to the matter at hand. Normally we'll be doing this through normal diplomatic channels, maybe discuss a few things about our two races as well. But at the moment we do not have the time for that. Vora, if you please. Vora nodded before pressing a button on the bracelet she was wearing. A holographic image of a ship appeared over the table. It was an interesting design, with a clear insectoid look to it. It was like a skyscraper in space, but had no windows and had large engines on the back. There was also a noticeable bulge in the middle of the ship. David suspected that it was a cover for the centrifugal hab they were in. But why cover it? Our ship was damaged after entering an unstable wormhole, Vora explained as red boxes appeared around the image, lines pointing to parts of the ship. Whilst we are able to conduct repairs ourselves, our fabricator was damaged. It's a simple fix really, we just need to fix one small thing. But, we do not have any spares on board, as our stock of them was badly damaged. And without the fabricator, we have no means of making a new one. Unless we can fix the fabricator, we cannot finish the repairs to our ship. David nodded. So, you need me to make you this component you need then, David said. Yes, Thasos said with a nod. Once the fabricator is online we'll be able to finish the repairs ourselves. But, until we fix it, we're stuck here. Not only that, but we're on a time limit. 2 hours, that's how long we have before life support fails. We had to jury-rig a few things, Irira added. They'll hold, but not for long. Okay, I see why you need our help, Toshinori said. But why contact David and I? Why not contact one of our world's governments? Because we just don't have the time to go through all the hassles of a first contact situation, Thasos replied. Whilst it doesn't look like it, our ship is badly damaged and we need that component now, not in a week or two. It was a miracle that it remained mostly intact after flying through the wormhole. Sadly, the same could not be said about our escort fleet of drone ships. None of them survived passing through the wormhole, she explained. It was even more of a miracle that we were able to get to your star system and remain undetected in the state we're in. Making contact with a pre-interstellar culture is, whilst not illegal, highly discouraged and frowned upon. So we'd prefer to fix our ship and be gone as soon as possible, with as little contact with your world. We also have a prior commitment to get to, an important diplomatic conference that we cannot afford to miss. It's vital that we get there, and we can't afford to be late. David frowned. So, those were the stakes. They needed a single component to fix their fabricator, but did not have the means to make it or have any spares, plus they needed to be heading off for something important. He could see why they wanted to keep this quiet. Contacting the government would take far too long and eat up time that they could not afford to lose. They needed to fix their fabricator quickly, and going through something like the government would just take far too long. Plus, there were bound to be a few people who might be a bit overzealous in trying to prevent them from leaving. There was a lot they could learn from these people, and some people might be a bit forceful in trying to keep them here. Well, I can see why you would want to keep things quiet, David said. Well, if you can provide me with the specs for the component you need, I'm sure that I can make it for you. But, what would you give us in return? We're willing to offer whatever you want in exchange for the component we need. Within reason, that is, Thasos replied. Barring anything related to our jump dash. Can you cure brain death? David suddenly asked. When he heard offer whatever you want, he instantly knew what he wanted. Thasos paused and blinked at him, a confused look on her face. She wasn't expecting that question. Toshinori turned towards his friend. David, what are dash? He said before David waved him off. Well, can you? David asked. Yes and no, Thasos replied. We are aware of some pieces of technology that can help revive someone from brain death, but they've only been known to work on one species, and even then, they have a very low chance of working. So, unfortunately, no, we can't cure brain death. Why do you ask? My daughter is brain dead, David said with a frown. She was caught up in a villain attack 3 years ago. I've been trying to come up with a way to restore her brain functions, but nothing worked, he said soberly before looking up. Please, she's all I have left. If there is anything you can do to revive her, please do it. I just want my daughter back. Thasos frowned, looking deep in thought. David didn't know what was going through the woman's head, but a part of him was hoping that she was thinking about a way to revive his daughter. The woman sighed. There may be one way we can bring your daughter back. But you may not like it. Mistress. Irira said, turning towards Thasos with a shocked look on her face. You can dash, she said before she was stopped by Thasos raising an arm. Thasos closed her eyes and sighed, before reopening them. We Cardrians don't reproduce the same way as you mammals do. Whilst we are fully capable of having sex, it is not needed for our species to reproduce. We may not look it, but we are actually insectoid, she said before her raised arm shifted. Like billions of tiny things were moving around it. Cardranus insecta. The apex predators of our homeworld. Our bodies are made up of billions of these tiny insects. Each one of us is our own swarm. A single mind formed from billions of tiny minds, all working together to form a single consciousness. David rested a hand against his chin, listening to Thasos' explanation of her species. This was quite fascinating. Now normally when people come up with hive minds in sci-fi, they're all massive swarms of something, mostly bugs, subservient to a single queen or powerful overmind. But these Cardrians were something vastly different and probably unheard of. Each one of them was their own individual swam, their own entity with their own free will. They were their own queen of their own swam. Due to our nature, our method of reproduction is very different from yours, Thasos continued. We reproduce by infesting a host body, getting in by either biting the host or being devoured by it. Either way, we get inside. Once inside, we devour the host from the inside, saving the skin till last. During this process, the Cardranus insecta are also busy replicating the insides and outside of the host. By the time they've completely devoured the host, they've also completely replicated it as well, forming an exact, one-to-one copy. It's why we are the apex predators of our homeworld. Because no matter what happens, we will still devour you, she explained. We Cardrians reproduce the same way. We just use a more humanoid host. It's not a cure per se, but it would restore her brain functions, at the cost of turning her into one of us, a Cardrian. Deal, David said without a second thought. What? Toshinori gasped, looking at his friend. David, what are you doing? Reviving my daughter, David replied. I've been trying to revive her for 3 years, to no success. If these Cardrians can revive her, then I will take it. But, she'll no longer be human. Toshinori said, horrified by what his friend was thinking. But she'll be cognizant. David said. She won't be stuck in a bed anymore, she won't need machines to keep her alive. If this is the price I have to pay to bring her back, then so be it. I just want her back. Toshinori frowned. He was not happy about this, not in the slightest. After hearing about how these Cardrians reproduce, he was both intrigued and horrified. These women were once people, not humans, but probably members of some other humanoid species, who were bitten by one of these Cardrians, eaten from the inside by self-replicating bugs, and had their form copied by them. It was horrifying to think about. And to have that happen to Melissa, even in her current condition, sickened him. Meanwhile, the Cardrians were having a similar discussion. Mistress, you can't be serious about this, Irira growled in her native tongue. A language that neither David nor Toshinori could understand. You can't convert a humanoid lifeform that's so young into one of us. We concord, Inoso added. We've never converted someone so young into a Cardrian. We know that. We also know that we are perfectly fine with devouring people of similar age, including Semitics, Thassos calmly argued back. The only difference here is that a new life will be born from it. It's no different from the normal way we reproduce. We can't agree to this, Irira said. We should find someone else. We can't afford to go looking for someone else to help us. Life support is barely hanging on, and it took us 4 hours just to locate him, Vora said, pointing towards David. Even if we did have time to find someone else, we have no guarantee that they'll be reasonable with their request as David is being. They may try to force us to give them the technology to travel between star systems. This offer might be the best offer we get from this world. Of course an Eshist would call that reasonable, Inoso remarked. Vora glared at Inoso. Leave our swarm host out of this. She spat. We've distanced ourselves from those criminals. Ladies, please. If you want to fight, do so when we don't have the threat of suffocation or freezing to death to worry about, Thassos said, calming the two women down. Anyway, the decision has been made, we're agreeing to this deal. As Vora said, this might be the best and only offer we get. We need that component and we do not have the time to find someone else to make it for us. And we'll be damned if we're stealing what we need. Inoso frowned and nodded. Who would look after her? She asked, looking back up. We can't leave a newborn Cardrian on an alien planet alone? We can leave Delizu behind to keep an eye on her, Thassos replied. She's been wanting to study pre-interstellar cultures. This'll provide her with the perfect opportunity to do so up close, she said before she turned towards David. David Shield. We find your terms acceptable. David let out a sigh of relief. Thank you. And that's how we became a swarm of alien bugs, Melissa said. Izumi, Achiko and Durandal just stared at Melissa with confused looks on their faces. The two hero students were wearing their hero costumes. Izumi also still had the goggles Melissa had made because she still couldn't take them off. The four of them, plus David and Toshinori, who was in his skinny form, were in one of David's private labs, listening to their story on how Melissa was revived. The fact her skin was now green was slightly odd, but after being told about how David and Toshinori were abducted by aliens, her sudden change in skin color was the most normal thing they learned today. There were a few things that happened before they told them this story. Izumi fangirled over meeting David Shield, and they explained what One for All was to Melissa, since apparently, neither Toshinori or David decided to tell her about it. Izumi had never been more disappointed in her mentor. The man was willing to tell a young girl he only met a few hours ago of his magical transferable quirk, but not a girl he's known for well over a decade. Who was also an alien. That's it? Izumi asked, confused by the abrupt ending of the story. You can't just end it there. Durandal said. You just got to the good part. You didn't even tell us about these Cardrians you spoke of, Achiko said. Like, we know they're big swarms of insects that take on human form and are predators, but you haven't said much else. Well, the next part is just self-explanatory? Melissa asked. Dad and Uncle might return to the planet with Thasos, Inoso, and Vora. Dad started to work on making the component they needed whilst Thasos bit us and started the conversion process. After that, a Cardrian named Delizu was left behind to look after us, just to make sure we didn't accidentally bite someone and make another Cardrian. I even added Vero to my name, as a mark of what swarm host I'm a part of. Swarm hosts are what Cardrians call families. Izumi frowned. Yeah, I get that part, but still, I can't help but be creeped out by what your father did to you. Even if it was to revive you. I did what I did for my daughter, David said. I saw an opportunity to revive her, and I took it. I was not going to let this opportunity pass. I just wanted my daughter back. And we are grateful for it, Melissa added. If he didn't do what he did, we would still be in that bed, only kept alive thanks to machines. A mindless husk, unable to do anything on its own. And even though I had a rough start, as well as a lack of help from some people she leveled a glare towards Toshinori, we were able to properly integrate ourselves into human society. Even if we had to hide our true nature and pretend to be quirkless. Toshinori frowned. As shameful as it is to admit it, for a while I was unsupportive of David's decision, he said. I refused to see Melissa as who she was for a few years. I just couldn't see anything but a swarm of insects pretending to be her. It took longer than I would like to admit before I got my head out of my own arse. So you're 2 for 2 in being an absolute dumbass to emotionally unstable girls, Durandal said. Toshinori nodded. Yes, I dash. I would have thought I would have learned my lesson the first time with Melissa. But, it appears that I didn't. I am so sorry, to both of you, for not being as supportive as I should have been. Wait, what does he mean by 2 for 2? Melissa wondered. Izumi frowned but nodded. She knew that Toshinori had been working to make amends for his actions, and whilst he was doing a good job of it, what he said to her on that rooftop still hurt, even after all this time. Still smacking him upside the head when he gets in here. You and me both, Nana. So, that story about you missing your mother, about wishing that she was still alive but working as an ambassador, Izumi said. Wasn't a lie, Melissa said. Everything we said about wishing that this never happened to us, the distance for all the attention, wishing that our human mother was still alive was true. We just omitted the fact that we had 2 mothers and that our second mother was an ambassador of an alien species. Izumi nodded. Melissa didn't lie, she just omitted something. Did they ever get back? Achiko asked. Thasos and the others, I mean. Did they ever get home? They did, Melissa replied. After finishing their repairs, the magnesium departed Earth's orbit. They were lucky that there was another wormhole in the area, slightly further away than the one that brought them here, but it was a stable one. So the ship wouldn't be destroyed when passing through it. They did return, a few years later, to check in on how things were going, and to pick up Delizu. And she pops around from time to time. But she's not around a lot. She's busy. Interstellar politics don't really give her time to pop round to a backwater planet on the other side of the galaxy. Izumi nodded, knowing what it's like to have a parent you rarely see. It's not easy at times, especially when you're going through some rough times. Well, I'm glad they got home all right, Achiko said with a sigh. One small question that's been bothering me, Durandal said. How the fuck did they already know English? That's easy, Melissa said. They had an AI that was by far more advanced than anything on the planet translated for them. Then one of them learned the language and passed the knowledge on to everyone else. Due to being a big swarm of bugs, we can pass on information from one Cardrian to another by physical contact. No spoken words required, she explained. We're a quite interesting species, once you get past how we procreate, or our biology, or how we eat people from time to time. We haven't personally, but others of our species have. But yeah, once you get past all that, we're an interesting species to get to know. We're very good with robotics, using vast numbers of robots to supplement our relatively small population. There are only 2 billion individual Cardrian swarms in the galaxy, and that's not counting the populations of the 5 other species that call our homeworld home, she said. Word of advice, never visit Caterin Prime. It is a bloody, brutal world. And a rather horny one as well. Sex is, apparently, very common among our kind. So you're a member of S species of horny, hot, sexy, 7-foot-tall green-skinned Amazonian space babes who are also big swarms of bugs who also eat people, Durandal remarked. Now that is not a combination I was expecting to ever see. But then again, these are aliens. Probably should have expected this, he said before he turned towards David. And you didn't have sex with any of them? David shook his head. No, I didn't sleep with Thassaus or any of the other Cardrians on board her ship. I hadn't gotten over Felicity's death. Still haven't. So no, I didn't sleep with any of them, he said before turning towards Toshinori. All Might, on the other hand. Toshinori's face suddenly turned a deep red as he started sputtering, coughing up a bit of blood. I don't know what you're talking about, David. I've done nothing of the sort. Never even so much as seen any of them naked. David smirked. Then what did you, Thassaus, and the 7 other Cardrians who crewed the magnesium do when they dragged you off to the mistress's bedchambers the last time they visited? Toshinori gulped. You are, diplomacy. Is that what they're calling it these days? Durandal asked smugly. Izumi screamed. Stop. Don't talk about that. Please don't finish this conversation. She cried, covering her ears. The last thing she needed was the mental image of All Might, her idol, having sex. I need bleach. Or mental bleach. Achiko gagged, covering her eyes and filling her head with random thoughts after choosing a very bad time to test her long-range mind reading. Melissa meanwhile was also covering her ears. Please shut up. We do not need to hear about Uncle Might having sex with our mother. Durandal meanwhile just stared at Toshinori. Congratulations, you are among the few humans to ever fuck an alien. Don't say that. Izumi, Achiko and Melissa shouted, really wishing that they were somewhere else. Wait, what do you mean by among the few? Izumi asked. Come now, do you really think Thassaus is the only visitor to our little corner of the galaxy? Durandal said as a worried look formed on Achiko's face. Believe me, she's not the only one. I think I've seen a Cardrian before. Tall, green skin, Amazonian body, skimpy outfit, speak third person, likes eating human meat. I've seen someone like that before. A woman named Hilala. One of Avalon's scientists. David looked at him with a confused look. What are yo dash? I am a machine made by Paxton, Durandal said. Both David and Melissa froze. Both Shell and AI were made by that madman. I saw that man every day I was stuck on board his flagships. I know that fucker's face oh so very well. As well as the faces of those who worked for him. And one day, he walked in with a woman named Hilala. A tall, Amazonian woman with green skin who always spoke in third person. And, after hearing your explanation of your species, I have no doubt that this Hilala is a Cardrian. Everyone in the room froze. The image that Durandal just put into their minds horrified them. You're joking, right? Melissa said with a shudder. Not wanting to believe that there was a member of her species working for Avalon. Durandal shook his head. Now that I know what she is, no. Even though I wish that I wasn't. She was definitely a Cardrian. One who was very good with robotics. But, there was no woman named Hilala on any Avalon personal list, David said. I think that was a deliberate choice, Durandal said. When I watched her talk to Paxton, I noticed he was different. He acted and talked to her differently, like they were old friends. Very old friends. The group paled and thought over what Durandal just said. This explains so much. Why Avalon had such advanced robots, why they could pump them out so quickly and effectively, and how they had such a technological advantage over everyone. They had outside help. It also explains something else as well. Durandal, Izumi said. I think we may have just identified who helped Edgar Henderson come up with the technology to develop the moon colony. What? David gasped. What are you talking about? When I was returning from my internship, someone spoke to me telepathically, Izumi said, getting an odd look from Achiko. The voice said that it was suspicious that we as a species managed to colonize the moon after 200 years of technological stagnation. So, I got curious and asked Durandal to look into it. We found the man's quirk reveal party, buried deep within the internet. He was quirkless. Edgar's quirk, advanced mind, never existed. Someone gave him those technologies and he passed them off as his own, making a fake quirk to explain how he designed them. And Paxton worked for him. If it was possible for their skin to go any more pale, it would have. There had already been a lot of bombshells dropped today, and this one was the largest by far. Please tell us you're joking, Melissa said quietly, too shocked to speak louder. I wish I was, Durandal said. Jensen Edwards, the man behind all of Hardon Industries' robotic achievements, is Paxton, just minus the hair. He was a member of Edgar's inner circle, who supposedly died during the terrorist attack that killed all of Hardon Industries' higher-ups. Or so we thought. Jensen survived and renamed himself Paxton. Silence filled the room. It took a while for everyone in the room to process this revelation. Jensen and Paxton were the same man. That horrified them. That a man like him could cause so much death and destruction. But then, what was the man's motivations? If he worked for Hardon Industries, why make Avalon and cause the deaths of millions? And why would this Halala help him? Well, let's just be glad that both of them are dead, Achiko said with a sigh. Don't be so sure, Melissa said. We Cardrians are notoriously hard to kill. Bullets just pass through us, and punches do nothing. Flamethrowers are about the only weapons that are effective against us. Large explosions maybe, but there is a chance that some parts of the swarm survive. If anyone survived the destruction of the Evangelion carrier, it would be Halala. Like drowning could kill one of us. She's probably the one calling the shots for the Avalon remnant forces, Izumi theorized, realizing that she now had to deal with an alien. But, why wait 11 years before restarting operations? Why not start sooner? We may never know, Melissa said. She could be anywhere. And if we do find her, we'll have no way to capture her. Interrogating her is also an impossibility. Izumi nodded. If watching several attacks pass through Melissa, then this Halala would be just as difficult to take down, if not more so. Well, she could just ask May to make a flamethrower or get Shoto from 1B to burn her. That should probably be able to deal with her. I know that look in your eye, Izumi, Toshinori said, a worried look on his face. Please, do not try to go after Halala. You are still a student, and she is more than just a villain. She's a predator. She will try and eat you. I do not want to see her do such a thing to you. Izumi nodded. Toshinori was right, she could not risk going after such a dangerous foe. Not when she's still so inexperienced. Plus she had no idea just how old Halala was, only that she was old and probably powerful. She doubted that either one for all or all for one could help against being devoured from the inside out by a swarm of insects. She just hoped that she never had to fight a Cardrian. But, knowing her luck, she just might have to. She'll ask May if she could install a flamethrower into him. Wait, didn't Hisashi touch Durandal? Why the fuck did she never ask if he could emulate her father's quirk? The next hour or so was spent learning more about the Cardrians, their society, their robots, and parts of their history. And holy fuck was it bloody. They had a world war that made the Third World War/Quirk Wars from the Dark Age of Quirks look like a promotion prank. To be fair, Caterin Prime is a planet where everything is trying to kill and eat you. And she meant everything, including the soil. There were also other species that lived on Caterin Prime. The Lessian, 7-foot-tall Amazonian bee-wasp scorpion hybrid woman, a combination that even All Might was scared to think about, who can shoot venom's barbs that will turn your insides into honey. The Fentia, 7-foot-tall Amazonian moth women who prefer to eat rotting corpses. The Longana, 7-foot-tall Amazonian ant women who lay their eggs inside of people, letting their children eat the host from the inside. The Kaskak, very large Amazonian arachne/drider woman who can turn your insides into soup. And the Shikara, 7-foot-tall Amazonian grasshopper women who like to jump on people and eat their faces off. So, equal parts sexy and downright fucking terrifying. Caterin Prime sounded like a fucking death world from Warhammer 40k. And these women were apparently civilized traders who specialized in robotics. The universe truly was a confusing place. But there was also something else as well. At no point did they explain what the Cardrians used to travel interstellar. These people apparently lived on the other side of the galaxy. Even counting the wormholes, that's a lot of distance to travel. So how do they travel it? Of course, there were more races out there, but they opted not to discuss them. Since they'll probably be here all day, and Izumi, Achiko and Durandal wanted to get back to enjoying the Expo, which had not been cancelled because, like the UA Sports Festival, it was too big to cancel. They just upped security. So, once they were done here, the three of them departed and headed back to the expo. Izumi, Achiko said as they walked. If it's about where you got your telepathic abilities from, leave it until you're comfortable with explaining it to me, Izumi said. I don't want to force you to divulge anything you don't want to. Even after learning that aliens are real and have visited our planet, I still don't want you to divulge anything about yourself until you are ready to tell me, okay? Achiko smiled gently. Thank you, Izumi. This entire conversation with Melissa shook me up a bit. She revealed a few things that worried me. Not that some of the things you revealed helped calm my nerves. Yeah, sorry about that, Izumi said, rubbing the back of her neck. But it was something that I felt needed to be said. At least we know who's leading the Avalon Remnant forces now. Achiko nodded. Yep. Anyway, back on track. Whilst I am still worried about what was discussed back there, it has helped to get a few things off my chest. Don't worry, I won't tell you about myself, not until I'm ready. There's still a lot I do not know about myself. But, once I know enough I will tell you everything, she said. At least this will make that conversation with you easier. Izumi smiled as they walked back to the expo hand in hand. She knew that Achiko was probably an alien as well, a hybrid probably, since she has both a quirk and telepathic abilities. That much was obvious to her. But, what species she was didn't matter. Achiko was her girlfriend, and she was going to be damned if she let something as trivial as a bit of alien blood force them apart. In this day and age of quirks, people look like all manner of things and could do anything. A little non-human blood wasn't going to change anything. Oh shit! Izumi suddenly shouted. What is it? Achiko asked. We never asked how Melissa made that armor around me. Izumi shouted. Achiko nodded. That was an important piece of information that they wanted to know about. The three quickly rushed back towards the lab. Unfortunately, when they got there and asked her about it, Melissa said that it was classified. Bugger. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 64. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.